Hey, what's up, guys? It's Michael from the Babylonian Pastor Podcast, and okay, you're probably going to notice Rob isn't with us. So if you're watching the video version, you're definitely going to notice it this month. We recorded this while Rob was on sort of a week getaway, sort of like a half vacation. So the internet signal was a little kind of off there. So you're going to notice that in certain episodes, and other episodes you're not going to be able to notice at all. But that's why this first episode is going to be incredibly short, and it's going to be more of an intro episode where I kind of talk to you about what the other episodes are about. So this month, we are going to be talking about questioning one's faith, a little bit of deconstruction, and what that looks like specifically in me and Rob's story. So you're going to have my part one, basically working through faith struggles, trying to figure out, scripture and what that means and what my faith means to me. And then that'll be my part one. And then you're going to hear Rob's part one, essentially the same thing. His life growing up until teenage years, and for a lot of it, you're going to notice our lives cross over a ton there. But there's a part where I move, and there's a lot of things that actually in these podcasts that you're going to listen to, especially his part one. There was some stuff that I didn't know. We just hadn't caught up on it. So it's really interesting. So both my part one and Rob's part one are going to be about us kind of, taking what we were given from our parents' faith and trying to figure that out. And the interesting thing is, and I think this is what you're going to find if you talk to anybody about their questioning of the faith or their deconstruction and reconstruction, is that it looks different for everybody. Me and Rob both grew up in the exact same church under the exact same pastors for 5 or 6 year period. And the interesting thing is we both handled that differently as we grew up and kind of had to own our faith and question if this was the faith that we wanted. And the interesting part is on the other side of that, so both of our part twos are trying to figure out and say, okay, well, this is what I did with all those questions, and this is how I ended up where I am now. Now, what you're going to find is in these conversations, they're pretty short. We wanted to keep them condensed. There's obviously a lot that is left out. I mean, these part ones and part twos could have easily been an hour each. But we just, for the sake of, we didn't have the time to be frank with you, to do that. And we might do that later if that's some sort of interest. So if you guys do DM us or leave comments on this and be like, hey, I'd be interested in more of that, we maybe might plan out a time where we can actually expand on that to where, one of us or the other one isn't crunched for time because of the things that have come up. So anyway, that's what you're going to hear this month. So hopefully that's interesting. One of the reasons I personally wanted to do this month's topic was brought up by me, is just because, as you know, if you follow the Instagram account, if you follow really a lot of the memes or just the culture right now, I guess, in Christianity, there's a lot going on surrounding this idea of questioning one's faith, on deconstruction, what that looks like. And I thought it would be interesting to explore that from a perspective of people that have done that, but have not left the faith. You're going to hear, I think Rob actually mentions it. I can't remember if it's part one or part two of his talk about his sort of walking through his faith. But he talks about, you don't hear a lot of stories of people questioning their faith and keeping it. And one of the things we wanted to do as we did this was to provide sort of a couple of those stories to show that, you can grow up in, not that we grew up in terrible circumstances by any means, but there was some legalism there, and you do have to work through that a bit. And everybody's going to do that differently. Probably the podcast in all 5 of these podcasts that you're going to find, or hopefully find, most helpful is the last one, where we kind of wrap everything up. It's Rob's part 2. We get to the end, and we kind of chat through what we see going on in Christian culture right now with deconstruction and all of that. And one of the things that I've really learned, just in this conversation, going back and forth and having to tell my story and Rob telling his, is that I think often, and I'll say a little bit of it here, try not to ruin it for you, but I think often what we do is we jump to conclusions. We see a part of someone's story, and we assume that that's where they're going to be for the rest of their life as far as their faith journey. And I know you're going to hear parts in Rob's story and in my story where if you would have come in at that point in my life or in that point in Rob's life, and just kind of made a snap judgment of, oh, well, this is what this person believes, then you wouldn't have got the full picture. And that's something, as we kind of talk about deconstruction, as you maybe listen to me and Rob's part 1 and part 2 this month, kind of consider that in your own life. Consider that in the lives of those that are in your life that you're concerned about, that are questioning faith, that are kind of maybe at this point in their life really far away from God, that this isn't the end of their story. And that's kind of the hope in this month, is just kind of to walk you through in a very quick way my story and Rob's story, to maybe give you some sort of, to see that even though we both grew up very similar in some instances at the exact same time in the exact same church under the exact same people, that we process that differently, we ask different questions, and we kind of reconstructed and owned our own faith in different ways. And I think it's different for everybody. So hopefully that's what you're going to find this month. I know this intro episode is super short. Maybe that's good, right? Maybe you don't need a really long episode. But I wanted to use this as sort of a primer for this month to say, okay, this is what to expect. These by no means are like really worked out hour-long episodes like some other people have done. I know, for example, there's some YouTubers that have gone through kind of the same experiment, only they were much more prepared to do it. But our stories are, like I said, they're super short, but hopefully they're helpful. So, guys, thank you for listening, watching, subscribing, all the cool things you do. We really appreciate it, and we hope that this month, hearing kind of our stories is helpful to you. It's beneficial to you, and it gives you sort of a framework to see that, this is a journey we're on with Jesus, and everyone is kind of at their own place on that, and all we can do in some places, and I think you'll see this in both me and Rob's stories when we tell them, but sometimes all we can do for someone is be there for them, or even if they push us away, we can still pray for them. Because they can run from us, or they can run from the church, or they can run from other Christians. They can't run from God. And hopefully you see that in these stories, and you see God's grace kind of at different points in your own story. So, guys, hopefully this month is helpful. We'll talk to you next Wednesday. I'll go first with my part 1, and then the following week will be Rob's part 1, and then obviously consecutively part 2 and part 2. So, guys, thank you for watching, doing all the cool things you do. I'll talk to you later.